Hello there, and welcome to AdMan Reacts. My name is Brian, and I'm an executive creative director. I've spent nearly 2 decades working in global advertising agencies. Today, I'm here to react and share my insight into the best and worst ads ever made. If you have any recommendations for the next ad I should react to, be sure to post them in the comments below. And as always, if you like the content in the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Let's get to it. Welcome to episode 1 of my YouTube series, Creative Director Reacts. Today, I'll be watching and reacting to PlayStation Europe's Double Life. Now, interestingly enough, this TV spot aired in 1999 on what is now known as CRT TVs. Remember now, back then, they did not have plasma TVs, LCD TVs. And also, the typical aspect ratio back then was 4:3 and not the widescreen 16:9. So you're going to see that in today's example. This TV spot was created by the then TBWA London team of copywriter James Sinclair, art director Ed Morris, and creative director Trevor Beattie, and was directed by the late great Frank Budgen. As a classical musician fan and a musician myself, I highly appreciated that they set all of this to the tune of Gabriel Fauré's Requiem, Opus 48, Sanctus. And I'll talk more about the important role, well, rather vital role, that background music and music tracks play in a lot of TV ads today. But for now, let's react.
For years I've lived a double life. In the day I do my job, I ride the bus, roll up my sleeves with the hoi polloi. But at night, I live a life of exhilaration.
Of missed heartbeats and adrenaline.
And, if the truth be known,
a life of dubious virtue.
I won't deny I've been engaged in violence, even indulged in it.
I've assailed adversaries, and not merely in self-defense.
I've exhibited disregard for life,
limb,
and property.
And savoured every moment.
You may not think it to look at me,
but I have commanded armies
and conquered worlds.
And though in achieving these things,
I have set morality aside,
I have no regrets.
For though I've led a double life, at least I can say
I've lived.
Okay, so I just wanted to get one clean run through so that everybody could just watch it from start to end before I do my reaction. I think we'll go back. Let's go back to the beginning. And I think what's interesting here, right, is a couple things. One, black and white's a great choice. But right away you hear Gabriel Fauré's Requiem Sanctus coming in with a choral piece. It sets that sort of the soprano setting that sort of high, sort of angelic theme, contrasting against this very stark black and white of the footage. And it's interesting. You have your first guy here. He's in the business suit and he's saying he's led a double life. And obviously it contrasts and goes straight to him being in a suit, to him being, basically naked from the top up. Almost this idea of, well, you've got your prim, proper professional, but then at home he's kind of wild and chaotic and sort of undressed. And so that's shown by him being topless here. You've got the high saturation as well of the color grading, the skin tone, all this, the colors that really pop out to contrast against the first scene in the black and white. So it really kind of hits you. It kind of just punches you really, really well, kind of just really hits you in that. And then also the dramatic sort of harsh lighting straight on as well. So it very is about contrasting and playing off the metaphor of his daily life, which is gray and boring and uninteresting, hence black and white, contrasting to his saturated nighttime. Things come alive at night. He's his whole self. He's naked and almost a little vulnerability is shown here, but that this is him, his real self right now, essentially. Again, going to the theme of the double life.
Of missed heartbeats.
Interesting there that her voice actually bleeds across, and it's an interesting little tactic to blend the transition. I don't think we really see this in any of the other cuts in this video. It's just in that. This girl, I wonder if this is the same girl that you see here next to him. It kind of looks the same, but of course I don't want to make assumptions, but it would make sense, given the framing of it. Back to black and white. And you're going to see that in a lot of these shots too, they don't do it all the time because that would be too much. But once in a while, you're going to see in instances where what they're saying in this sort of prose form, almost Walt Whitman style sort of monologue, is you're matching up what they're saying to almost the visual itself. And we see this in a couple instances.
And if the truth be known.
Here, for instance, they talk about, dubious violence. And so then they cut immediately to them wearing these sort of masks, which are almost like the bank robbery masks and stuff. And so that's quite interesting to have that contrast. And then you've got also this guy, talking about life, liberty, and then Lim, which is the guy in the wheelchair as well.
For life.
Lim.
So it's interesting that, he says Lim, he's in a wheelchair. And so again, you have that sort of metaphorical play off of what he's saying. And then also what they're showing in the shot, a lot of back to black and white. And it's interesting here too, is that it's not like he doesn't seem like he's sad or depressed or, there's nothing negative about him, even though he's, handicapped and in a wheelchair. He's joyous. There's a lot of joy here. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of dynamic, sort of feeling to this, even though it's black and white, which is interesting, right? Because again, compared to the first shot where it's black and white to now this shot where it's black and white, but yet he's very alive and he's very, coming alive and stuff like that. So that's quite interesting to see there. This is funny because I laughed because this is like your typical gamer. Like when people think of gamers, right? They think, oh, this is what it is, right? Dude sitting on a couch with all this like, fast food wrappers and stuff. But he's talking about savoring everything, talking about, really being in that. And I thought it was quite funny when they had that. This one also, this is an interesting shot because we're talking about basically don't judge a book by its cover, right? What you see on the outside may not be who the person is on the inside. And, lending itself to the whole thematic of a double life. I'm leading a double life. You may see me as this and this outwardly, but internally, I'm totally different. I'm a different person, etc. And hence that sort of double life theme really going strong through everything. There was a shot here, which to me is very, very reminiscent of perhaps some inspiration taken from the black and white ad from Apple for their Think Different launch campaign where they had the celebrities. It's a very similar framing. You can see the guy's been very weather torn. He's lived life. Life shows on his face, and it's interesting that it's such a macro close up on that too. They really want you to see the lines in his face, and he's got this sort of very stature to him as well, almost a Shakespearean style delivery, which is quite cool to see.
Morality aside,
I have no regrets.
For though I've led a double life, at least I can say
I've lived.
And so that's really where all this comes to head. In a lot of ads, you'll see this very consistently as well. Is they'll tell a story, but then they have to bring it back to the brand. They have to bring it back to the product or whatever they're selling, whatever they're marketing. They need to close that loop, right? So they've got you intrigued with the story, the visuals, the music, all that. Now they have to give you that, oh, I get it moment or the aha moment for the brand, right? Like, why is PlayStation talking about this? Why can PlayStation, the brand, own this story and what they're saying, right? And so they end that monologue with, at least I've lived. So it's this callback to people, the drones of society maybe, who go along their life doing their boring, monotonous life, in contrast to these people who are all PlayStation gamers, and how, PlayStation and gaming has enriched their life. It's allowed them to show them true selves, allowed them to, shake the shell of mortality in a way. And, they talk about being immortal and all this stuff and conquering armies, and allowed them to basically live out their fantasy and their dreams. And hence that has sort of enriched who they are as a person, right? And all this under this umbrella of double life. And of course, like every ad, you have to end with a tagline or some sort of mantra or some sort of written statement of the brand or the campaign. We call that a tagline. And here it says, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation. Now, I wonder, is there a world where this is just shortened? I personally, and this is a personal preference, but I like taglines and lines to be fairly short and fairly succinct. I think once you start getting very, very long, and there are many cases to be made for long copy, long form type, long form taglines. But personally, when it comes to a lot of these ads and stuff on the end lines, I like to have something a little bit more punchier. So I'm wondering if there's ever a situation where they could have gone just the power of PlayStation, right? It is a little bit more open, and I understand why they say do not underestimate the power of PlayStation. But I think in some ways that could be implied through the actual ad. I think as an umbrella idea, just talking about the power of PlayStation and the fact that it's done everything for these people could be an interesting way to go. But, you know, it's obviously an iconic line. And the idea that, you know, everybody is underestimating the PlayStation, or underestimating the, you know, the gaming world and the power that gaming has on people's lives and the effect it has comes through here very, very exactly and very specifically, I think. And so I understand why they've written it like this. Now, remember, this is before the mnemonic of the PlayStation logo, where now you have this iconic PlayStation logo and then it goes doom, right? So you don't really have that here yet, but it could have been cool. You know, if you think about what would be a remastering of this, well, you'd have the line and then you'd have the PlayStation logo on a separate cut that would just be like the doom PlayStation mnemonic sound and then the logo hitting. Could be very cool as well. But yeah, iconic ad, multi-award winning. I think it's now in the Clio Hall of Fame or something like this. But I think what's really interesting, right, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot, is the insight in which this idea was formed, right? And I'll talk more about what is an insight, what is a key insight in probably another video. But in short, a key insight is a human sort of truth, right, that can come out. So whoever you're talking to in your ad or marketing to, you have to understand those people. You have to understand their group. What motivates them? Why do they do what they do? What's the psychology? What's the sociology? What's the patterns, right? And out of that comes a key insight, which is that unique nugget of human truth. And so obviously, whenever you're starting the creative process, you need to have that key insight, because that's going to allow you to really springboard into the creative process. What's also really interesting is that PlayStation, and this is very much Europe, right? So this is played in Europe, is that the vocabulary, the vernacular, the delivery of the lines, very much suited for the European market, the British, even the British accent, I think, came through quite well on some of the way that the lines were written and the delivery. I think that ultimately it's quite interesting that there's no game footage, right? So there's no cuts of like iconic PlayStation games. There's no, in-game footage being shown here in a mashup, which is quite common nowadays to see. It's all live footage, real people. And I think that's interesting because when you're looking at an ad like this, what we call a master brand ad, so that is essentially an ad that is made to show the brand on a global level. So the portfolio of the brands under a brand. So if you think of like a Kraft, right? Kraft is a parent brand, and under Kraft, you've got so many different brands. So sometimes these companies want to do an ad that talks at the very top level of what the parent brand is and what do they stand for, what do they mean, et cetera. And so we call that a master brand ad. And essentially that's what this is at least for the PlayStation Europe market. But this ultimately, this ad works globally for PlayStation, the brand. It does not necessarily just a European PlayStation, even though it aired in Europe. This is really a master brand talking about PlayStation, the brand. What does it do? What is the power of PlayStation? What does that mean, right? And in terms of, talking to potential gamers, but also current gamers, this is why we exist as PlayStation. This is what the power of PlayStation means, right? And you should get involved. And, and that's what's so great about this ad is there's not any in-game footage. There's no cuts to people playing the games even. There's no controllers. They don't show the product itself, right? That's what's so powerful about this ad is you don't have, product shots. You don't see the console at all. It's the absence of the product. If you remember in Mad Men, when Don Draper is talking about Heinz ketchup ads, he's talking about the absence of Heinz ketchup, right? And so how powerful is that when you can advertise something without showing the product, right? And that's what the master brand typically does is they talk about what do we stand for more so than buy the console, right? So it's not a hard sell ad at all, but that's the beauty of it, and that's what makes this so powerful. Well, that's going to do it for me in this episode. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe the video, and I'll see you for the next episode, episode 2.